Good morning! It's Crystal, Leah Hope, your favorite wedding coordinator, and I am here at the venue. Got my caffeine going, got some breakfast already in my tummy, have all the decorations in the vehicle, and I am gonna get ready to go ahead and unload the decorations by the door so that once I'm able to go in, I can just start setting up the tables. Every time we start with the table decor and then we move on from there to the ceremony area. And that's usually about it. The little things like putting together the gift card box table takes like less than a minute. So you start with the longest process, which is table decor, and then you move to the ceremony, and then you move towards, well, typically if there's like tablecloths and stuff. So here we go, let's get it kicked off.
All right, you know how it starts. First, you gotta get tablecloths on every one of these tables, and voila, we have finished that job. We also have the catering tablecloths on. Don't forget, you do need to provide tablecloths for your food. And then I'm gonna come over here. I have my wedding emergency kit bag right over here. And inside my emergency kit bag, I have the next step, which is fabric water shield. This is actually a pro tip given to me by one of my friends. And they suggested that I start spraying this on top of the tablecloths to kind of keep it from being able to have stains on it easier, especially when there's going to be barbecue. So that's a huge pro tip to use for yourself. And now it's time to put on these centerpieces on each of the tables. So I'm going to go around and place a wood centerpiece on all of these tables. Meanwhile, you can see that the bridal suite is a little active. The girls are in there getting their stuff loaded in. I'm answering phone calls from different vendors who are going to be arriving soon with their questions. I think that was the DJ asking if we're going to be outside, which the answer was not quite sure yet because the weather was a little tricky, so we had to manipulate it. After I answered those and the girls are all doing their hair and makeup, I continued doing the centerpieces, which we had a runner and lanterns on each of the tables. This wedding did not have any chargers or centerpiece or napkins or silverware on the table or cups on the table, which significantly decreases the time you have to spend setting up, which is really important because this wedding actually begins at 2 o'clock, which is different than our typical timeline, which is around 4 or 5 o'clock. Here is the ultimate setup of how it looks. Of course, you make sure all the lantern boxes are cleaned on the inside with glass cleaner. This is our beautiful Mr. and Mrs. Neon sign for the head table. Pro tip is to use your bridal party bouquets as centerpieces for your tables. I am parking my van over here to keep anyone from parking right there. That way the catering company has a closer area to stop in and park. Meanwhile, I have everything for the outside ceremony space placed aside just in case we can set it up. And like I said, very quick and easy to set up the gift card station. So it did stop raining for a little bit and I went ahead and put up the drapery and the flower piece onto this arbor outside. While I was out here, the florist stopped by with the flower petals and kind of helped me make sure that the drapery looked nice. And then Dad came out to ask some questions and make sure we're on the same page because Dad was going to go buy some tablecloths and towels for us to try to keep everyone dry if we were to be outside. Meanwhile, we have some of the pre-photos getting done of the dress, all the detail shots. And I have already set up the inside of our reception area to makeshift like a possibility of an inside wedding just in case it starts to downpour. It's nice to have a backup plan and it's easy to manipulate it to look like there's an aisle when there's not an aisle. So here we are, Dad's first look. So it got a little crazy just before. People were beginning to arrive, and we weren't 100% sure what the plan was going to be, but the bride said if it's just sprinkling, she wants it to be outside. So I had the guests stay inside and pick a seat while we waited, and then 5 minutes prior to the ceremony, we had them go outside and grab a tablecloth provided to sit on, and we were pre-wiping down the benches for that top layer of water so that it doesn't soak through the tablecloth that Dad had purchased earlier that day. As soon as we rushed everybody outside, I was able to make everyone get into a lineup. Here we have the photographer, the videographer, and the DJ all hanging out together. This takes a ton of communication together to make sure that everybody's on the same page as to their start time. We also have to make sure that people get moving outside, especially when it's raining, help them find a seat and let them know, hey, we're wanting to start. This is going to be very quick since it is sprinkling. We'd like for everyone to get out here really fast so we can get this show on the road. So it kind of takes some teamwork to encourage people to find a seat versus standing around, and that's one of my jobs. Did hear our little ring bearer was having a moment, so I had ran off, grabbed a cookie from the kitchen, and gave him a cookie. One of the best tips and pro tips I will 100% say is when you have young ones who like naps, always have something sweet like candy or cookies to encourage them during the transition of whatever activity they were wanting to do before they walked down the aisle. And as soon as he had the cookie, he was crying, he started to eat it, and then he started to feel better. So guests were still pretty much standing around outside at this point, and we were really wanting to get the bridal party to start walking down the aisle, so we made an announcement for guests to sit down. That way we could start before potential rain were to come in. One thing people forget about whenever they're planning their wedding and they say, I don't need a coordinator, is who's making this timeline and who's also following up with all the vendors during the day and answering their questions, and who's standing here with you giving you the signal to go down the aisle. It's actually a super comforting thing to have someone there who's giving you a thumbs up to say, okay, it's time for you to go down now, watching for them. And if you don't have someone who you trust doing that, it could make this part pretty stressful. But here's what it looks like when you hire me. I'm actually in there with you, having conversation with you, answering the questions, and giving a thumbs up on the sideline to give you a heads up on the time to go. So one of my suggestions for my brides is as soon as they step out, if they have a long train, just to pause a little bit once they get to the start of their path, and I actually go out there and flare it for them. And I walked out to let the DJ have the cue of once they made it to the front to give them a cue to go ahead and turn down the music. Now that the ceremony has officially started and we were able to be outside, I went ahead and manipulated all of the chairs back to their original places. And then I also went around and I filled up all of the non-alcoholic drinks into the beverage tubs. If you don't have a catering company to do it or somebody in charge and I notice it's not done, then I'll try to do it as soon as I am available. And as soon as I had the room switched up and ready to go, they're still having their ceremony. Nobody even knew. Everything's completed. And we're ready for the cocktail hour. After that, I just go back out and I join them to help them have a cue on where they need to go after their ceremony so they can meet up with their photographers, videographer, and take some bridal party photos. Cocktail hour has started. I'm going to move in these wet lanterns but leave everything else until after the photos are completely done, just in case they want to do any mock photos by the arbor. During cocktail hour, once everything is situated, I'm keeping my eye on you and the crowd and making sure that the DJ, photographer, and videographer will be ready for your grand entrance.
Of course, we've got Trevor and Macy.
Woo! Since this is an afternoon wedding, we're going to start with our dances. And then father and daughter dance. And then our mother and groom dance. My son better hold me like that when he gets married. After dances, we went ahead and opened up the floor for the bridal party to eat first and then introduced the tables out. And after that, we went ahead and did some games and did some more photos. While they did photos, I started to clean the tablecloths with my Clorox and my scrub brush. Just like that, it's done. During that time, we're getting some more portraits done outside. With the weather being a little trickier, we had to manipulate our schedule to make sure that we were going to get all of the things that they were hoping for videography. And when it comes to videography and photography, it's such a key thing to have someone who will help direct you on how to hold each other, how to look at each other, how to kiss each other, and capture the moments that you were wanting them to capture. After they were done, we went ahead and cut the cake. And then we went into some toasts.
I told myself I wouldn't cry.
This was a pretty emotional speech for both the bridal party members, the maid of honor and the best man. These two are loved so very much, so it was really sweet. A fun game that the DJ did was announce that the bridal party had a dance they had surprised everybody with, and their dance was grabbing people onto the dance floor. It worked phenomenally.
Dance by the water beneath the Mexican sky.
So while they're having the time of their lives, I'm going to go ahead and start breaking down certain items. They're over here dancing. I've gotten all of the centerpieces placed onto one table. I'm moving all of our decorations and packing those away, and then I'm placing their decorations into one of their tubs that they had brought along with their cards to keep them all organized and not get lost. Now it's time for the bouquet toss and the garter toss.
By the water beneath the Mexican sky. Drink some margaritas by a string of blue lights. Listen to the mariachi play at midnight. Are you with me? Are you with me?
When it's time, I'm going to help organize a bridal tunnel. So we're going to get all of your bridal guests into a tunnel. I'll give them all the things, whether they're sparklers or bubbles, and give them directions so that they know where to stand and how to get this action going for your photographers to then take over once everybody's organized and get that shot that you're wanting. Of course, if y'all know me well enough, you know that one of my suggestions is that if it is a grand exit, you can say it's a grand exit. If it's not, just have the DJ announce that the bride and the groom have a photo that they want to invite everybody to take part of outside. So now it's just the dance party, and I have officially cleaned up all of their personal decorations and all of my decorations with the exception of the tablecloths, and I just caught them dancing. Pro tip is to put all the trash into one place for helpers to discard of them as needed. And once everybody was pretty much done, we had the bride and groom get to have their final dance. Everybody has officially left. It's just me and the DJ waiting to close up shop. Once all of his items were out and mine were out, I closed up the venue as requested by the venue owners, and we were able to head out. This wasn't a typical timeline, but it's a perfect timeline for an afternoon wedding. Even with the rain making us have to reconfigure things along the way, that's our job, is to make sure that this day isn't about us, but it's about you. Congrats to our bride and groom, Mackenzie and Dion!